Amazing matches otherwise, though. I mean, Zach Weed versus Cheppa Cross, Logan Mazur versus Wolf Glick. So many incredible games. Unfortunately, can only pick one.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see some of those other big-name trainers later, but hey, we've got a match for you. If you've ever cried in the comments of our Twitch chat and or our YouTube channel about how all the teams are the same, I challenge you to watch this next round.
Yeah, actually, I would like to raise that challenge to a formal challenge. I guess I was thinking about something more difficult than a challenge, and I was like, well...
A grand challenge?
Grand challenge.
A groovy challenge? That's still...
Actually...
That's my new name for it. It was recommended to us. I think it's a huge improvement.
I think looking at what Vijay's cooking for this round, I think this will be a groovy challenge of a match. Because these are Pokemon! And honestly, his opponent, Jeremy Parsons, also has some very unique picks relative to what we've seen so far on stream, not relative to what Vijay has brought to the competition. There's a new bar being set here, and unfortunately, I think a lot of us will be falling short. As Vijay on the left-hand side of your screen, it's time for the full reveal. Y'all, you don't need glasses. This is correct. You're seeing Meowscarada, Sylveon, Scyther, Snorlax, and then the more anticipated Pokemon of Primarina and Blaze Breed Tauros.
Yeah, when Tauros is like the second or third least weird Pokemon in your team, you're cooking.
Jeremy, though, not going to be left out of the Groovy Challenge competition. They have brought Flamigo, and then some more popular Pokemon like the Goldengo, the Incineroar, the Ursaluna, the Amoonguss, and the Porygon 2. But I think most notably about Jeremy's team opting to drop the Tyranitar, which is what you typically see with these Pokemon, and replace it with Flamigo. So not the co-star I think a lot of people were anticipating on seeing in this competition for that team. But let's look at Vijay's team first, as I'll be real with you, Scott. I was looking up some of these Pokemon mechanics coming into this matchup to make sure I knew what was up.
Yeah, I believe, so I know this trainer is Tinkaton guy.
Yes.
There's no longer a Tinkaton, but you know, again, if Tinkaton were here, it would be among the least weird Pokemon on the team. I wish I could tell you anything about Scyther other than it is a Pokemon that knows moves.
Yeah.
It should be fun to watch. Now, I think there's a lot going on here. Okay, I think the Pokemon I'm most excited for is Snorlax. We actually saw Snorlax make a pretty deep run at the Pokemon World Championships. It was a very different strategy. It was like a support-based Snorlax. This Snorlax doesn't just hunger for food, it also hungers for blood, playing a little bit more aggressively than we're used to Snorlax seeing this format. Although, again, with this Assault Vest, right? Even offensive Snorlax, we've seen in the past, is like almost always some sort of like belly drum gimmick. This is very different than what we're used to. I'm very excited to see this. It's probably literally the most original team I've ever seen at 4-0.
It's not only the most original team I've seen at 4-0, I think it's also one of the most offensive teams that I've seen undefeated, as if you look at this trainer's options for speed control, you have a couple of priority attacks, but that's it. Every single Pokemon on this team seems like it's optimized to just deal damage, and like Dewey was saying, you know, if there aren't enough Pokemon on the opposing side of the field, you kind of just take the advantage.
Yeah. And you can imagine why this might work in this format, right?
Yeah.
You've been talking about all the major archetypes in this format, and I think one common thread between almost all of them, and you know, just like 7 easy steps, you have your strategy, and this team is not going to give you those steps for free.
No, Jeremy on the opposing side of the field now. I want to start off with their Flamigo, as I made a joke about Co-Star earlier, but this one's actually scrappy, which means it can be hitting Pokemon like Goldengo with close combat with those attacks. Also, one of the few Wide Guard users that's actually been running Wide Guard in the metagame right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've, you know, again, we've seen Scrappy a little bit. I think I was actually on Wolf's team where it was a co-star on that team. This time it's going to be the primary performer here. It's going to be the lead act, and I think it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, we see Goldengo, I believe is the second most used Pokemon at this tournament. It's generally been what we've seen so far in this format. It's a really important Pokemon to have a good matchup with. Most Goldengo using that Steel Terra type as well, so it gets to keep that weakness. I guess no longer requiring Scrappy. And then, yeah, I mean, Wide Guard seems like it counters half of the major archetypes in this format. On top of that, you otherwise have a pretty normal-looking team. Like Incineroar, Ursaluna, Amoonguss, Porygon 2 is a pretty common group of 4 you select with that version of the team. Goldengo can mix in when it's appropriate. And, you know, it's kind of funny as we talk about all of these unexpected Pokemon. It's the first Incineroar of the day in round 5, which truly is a brave new world.
I was going to say, check that one off your bingo cards. Incineroar appeared on stream.
The other thing I was going to note too is one move that we see on this Ursaluna that has picked up popularity recently that wasn't on our slide is that substitute on Ursaluna. I played a little bit of this because I kind of didn't like the already outdated version of this team that was used in a tournament last weekend or something. The meta's going fast. Substitute felt really, really strong. Because as we saw with Tailwind in the previous game, so you try to double protect through that. And typical Ursaluna, not only is it not really have any way to take advantage of turns just being stalled out, but actually loses a little bit of health from the burn. Getting a free substitute off so you can actually swing again once Trick Room expires is pretty devastating. I think it's a nice little tech. It felt really strong to me, and looks like it's working so far in this tournament.
Yeah, Jeremy also coming into this tournament with a lot of momentum, having Day 2 Worlds in Honolulu, but we're going to be starting things off with the Incineroar lead. Okay, that's one thing that you can count on in BGC, alongside a Porygon 2 for Jeremy, but Meowscarada and Blaze Breed Tauros on the field for Vijay.
Yeah, 3 Pokemon you probably weren't expecting to see. In the last format we saw the white herb on this Tauros, different, like a herb-based item than we typically see. Often the mirror herb on Tauros, instead the throwback white herb.
Yeah, and that will allow this Tauros to not have the stat drop from that Intimidate stick, but at the same time, what is it going to do in this position?
Well, it's 2 Pokemon that don't want to be hit by close combat, so I'd say not such a bad spot to be. And while this Meowscarada has been intimidated, it does have some interesting options. It could try to knock off this Eviolite. It could flee the battle. It could have gone for a flower trick, but I think that's very unlikely at this point. It's
Sylveon that takes the field for the Meowscarada. So Vijay was known for running Meowscarada and Tinkaton, the fairy type. So they sort of have that synergy going, not really as much. We do get the Trick Room from the Porygon 2, though, as I believe we saw Fake Out go into the Tauros.
Yeah, so everything is expected. The close combat now looking a little further away, where even though both of these Pokemon are weak against it, Incineroar probably pretty likely to flee battle here, and even Porygon 2, going to survive a close combat at this point. So Incineroar getting out.
I am curious, though, how this switch is going to work out for Jeremy. It is Amoonguss, so having access to redirection with Rage Powder will be huge against this Tauros if it is able to attack, as that Terra Blast brings it down into the yellow. Hyper Voice followed up with a close combat. Porygon 2 is able to hold on.
It makes it a little tricky here, unlike the Aqua Breed Tauros, so no priority move for this Tauros, so that you'd assume if that was an option, Amoonguss would be happily redirecting it.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, it's a difficult Pokemon to see now, where Amoonguss can be the slowest Pokemon on the field. Everything that we've seen so far on the other side of the field really doesn't want to play against Amoonguss, so a Pokemon that could be very pivotal in this matchup.
Vijay really has to struggle against this Trick Room because of that lack of priority at this point in time. And even if the Meowscarada comes back out onto the field, either through a KO or a switch, Sucker Punch just isn't going to work out at the end of the day, I think, to out-damage Jeremy at this point in time. Yes, Porygon 2 is on its last
legs. There's some priority.
I was going to say, that's a priority attack from Sylveon. Pixelate making that normal type attack a fairy type attack, will pick up that KO, will be put to sleep thanks to Spore due to its trouble.
Sleeping, Tauros is still going to get to move.
I was going to say, that Tauros, it's a fire type Pokemon, and if there's one thing Amoonguss cannot take is the heat from a Flare Blitz.
Well, we see 2 very popular Pokemon just get absolutely obliterated there, and hey, Tauros, known as a pretty frail Pokemon there, but after getting absolutely chunked by that Terra Blast, still able to slightly survive the recoil from its own Flare Blades, and that could be a big deal here. I'm not looking at it, do its part to help try to stall out this Trick Room with a Protect here, but if able to come back in later once Trick Room expires, neither of these Pokemon are going to be real excited by getting hit by yet another close combat.
No, Jeremy does still have Terastallization on their side of the field, and I think that Ursaluna almost has to Terastallize at this point if you're worried about the grass type attacks from the Meowscarada, but its Terra type is Ghost, so it's going to be taking super effective damage from those dark type attacks. So as long as Vijay is able to find a way through these next Trick Room turns, I think that Meowscarada is going to be so happy to make an appearance.
So no Protect, maybe just calling a substitute and knowing that it's a little bit slower. I'll have to see what Incineroar does. If he doesn't knock out the Tauros, this could be terrible.
Knockoff will knock out that Tauros. That is correct.
Yeah, got him. 4 HP is a whole lot, but able to pick up the knockout. And we kind of see the power substitute here. And not really a need to knock this Sylveon out yet. Instead, a position where against all these powerful Pokemon, wanting to make sure that if Trick Room does expire, still in a position to get some work done.
Scyther, holding Eviolite, will be taking the field next, and I do think this is our opportunity to talk a bit about this Scyther, as it has the Technician ability, which will be boosting the power of Thief and Dual Wing Beat, will not be boosting the power of Close Combat, which is its final move. And I have to wonder here if Vijay knows his damage calculations of Close Combat versus Incineroar. Will take the opportunity to protect this turn, not wanting to lose that Scyther to a potential Facade and Flare Blitz double up. But still, what a unique Pokemon pick to bring into this tournament.
Yeah, kind of not such a bad Pokemon to have here right now. Like, I'm not super familiar with my Cypher defensive stat calcs, but you'd think that with the Eviolite there, probably can take a single Facade. Twisted Dimensions returning to normal now, and now you're kind of interesting spot where Sylveon's got to be pretty close to waking up. Incineroar now having to face down a Scyther that could hit it super effectively, kind of flipping what we expect from the type chart. Or, maybe that Dual Wing Beat, focusing down the Ursaluna as the real threat here is an option too, although with Meowscarada as the final Pokemon in the back, these two Pokemon are going to need to do at least most of the work getting rid of Incineroar, and Scyther's coming in. Oh, that's a lot of damage.
That's a lot of damage. Not quite the knockout, but that Incineroar is at such low health. It's possible that Sylveon's Hyper Voice, with that Fairy Feather still intact, would be enough to pick up that damage, or maybe just some recoil. We see Flare Blitz get the one-hit knockout on Scyther, despite the Eviolite, but that'll actually take the Incineroar off the board.
And Sylveon's been sleeping for a long time.
It has. It will take this opportunity to wake up, which will break. Actually just will do damage through that substitute because it is a sound-based move, and Facade will return the knockout there.
Oh, this is so weird.
It's so weird,
that was
right?
really, really bad for Vijay there, where I think breaking the substitute would have probably just ended the game because then Meowscarada gets to come in, fire off a super effective attack. Instead with that I guess it doesn't matter, never mind. I was going to say with the substitute till there, this would be a big deal except for Focus Sash is an item that exists. So instead, we'll safely get to swing twice, although there's not really any reason not to weave Protect here and get the burn damage as well, but should be a pretty clean victory here thanks to the heroics of Tauros and Scyther in Game 1.
What a crazy game. It will take a couple of turns for this to resolve, as Meowscarada, I think quite smartly, protecting itself this turn, has it available, will preserve that Focus Sash for another turn, ensuring that the game will last for another 3 turns. And as we can see from that burn damage, that should be plenty of time to pick up that KO. But Vijay ending this game with a little bit of style. This will be, I think, our first Stellar Terastallization on stream of the season. And it's very beautiful, it's very sparkly, and will certainly do enough damage to break the substitute on that Ursaluna. Finally.
This substitute is hosed.
It really is. I want to take a moment, though, to talk about Vijay's game plan going into this Game 1, as I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit skeptical about the Scyther, but seeing it do enough damage to ensure that Flare Blitz is a KO in return for the trade, I feel like that was something he had to have calced for, right?
Yeah, I mean, unlike Jeremy, likely very important to his plan with Scyther and the team, and it's kind of interesting where, you don't see a lot of non-fighting type Pokemon with powerful fighting type attacks. Scyther not too many people's team builder. Congratulations on that very impressive Game 1 win. And yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, we're in an interesting spot here. I thought critically too, we didn't really get to learn too much about how well Scyther would have taken those attacks, because by the time it got hit, it had already lowered its defense by using Close Combat. So, Jeremy doesn't know for sure here. Would Facade have knocked out a healthy Scyther? Would Flare Blitz have knocked out a healthy Scyther? Maybe not. Still some questions as we enter Game 2, and this team surprises continue to exist on top of the fact that, the 2 Pokemon we didn't see were Snorlax and Primarina. I don't think they're in any way unpickable in this matchup, so I don't know if I'm feeling super good about this one if I'm Jeremy, where he's been so good in Swiss at so many tournaments, but this is a tough matchup.
I was gonna say, talk about Pokemon that I anticipated on seeing in game number 1 from Vijay. I mean, Snorlax is right on top of the list. You have no way to stop Trick Room other than stalling it out and removing Porygon 2 early enough in the game that it can't come back.
So I think what we just saw in the replay, to me, is the key turn of that game.
Yeah.
Mungus choosing to put Sylveon to sleep with that Spore instead of redirecting attacks away, gives up the Porygon kind of for free, and then winds up going down pretty easily itself anyway. I think that was just kind of a miscalculation where perhaps Jeremy also forgot about the quick attack, because I think that was just a devastating turn against.
Yeah, their approach to this game, I think, was correct. You know, you set up Trick Room, you know that your opponent doesn't have any access to speed control or any way to stop it other than those KOs, and then you hope that you find enough damage to basically end the game before Trick Room expires. But unfortunately for Jeremy, this just didn't really play out for them, and Vijay was able to find this end game where it's 1v1, essentially focus Sash versus Ursaluna, and unfortunately for Ursaluna, it was on a timer and ended up losing to its own burn.
Yeah, I think the one positive thing I think I would say on Jeremy's side of the field is that Game 1 is much more difficult to play when you're in a team that's kind of this unexpected when you're on the other side of the field. Where, while Jeremy's team is a little bit of a swap from what we're used to seeing with that Flamigo appearing in the Tyranitar slot, you know, generally it's something that Vijay could have prepared for, where no one's preparing for this. So at least, like, okay, while there's still a lot of options and like maybe there wasn't like the greatest information gathering Game 1 ever, you have some idea for how he approached the matchup, which allows Jeremy to then turn around like, okay, well, I give a little bit better idea of what I might need to do. Perhaps I underestimated the Tauros a little bit, where the White Herb actually was like super huge in that.
Yeah, it was.
Because that damage really mattered. You know, the quick attack from Sylveon, usually a little bit underwhelming, but was absolutely critical in that matchup. So, man, I can't believe we're watching this.
I'm honestly surprised in the best way possible. Like, we spent so much time, I think, talking about creativity, both coming into this tournament and obviously in earlier segments in this tournament. Vijay is the embodiment of creativity right now. When you have a format where you know that there's going to be some unique things, you have these Pokemon that you've been playing with time and time and time again, and you have that experience, you can find these opportunities for these Pokemon to shine. And as we see a repeat here of the Tauros and the Sylveon and the Porygon 2 and the Incineroar, I think Vijay is in the driving seat once again.
Actually, a slightly lighter position than last game was Sylveon coming out instead of the Meowscarada. Last time that was a turn 1 switch, so you know, can't fake up both Pokemon, right? You're going to get that Hyper Voice off a turn faster, or a Close Combat's going to come out here and chuck one of these two Pokemon. And hey, you know, maybe Blaze Breed Tauros is a little underrated. I thought the its water type cousin was pretty impressive as well. But you know, Tauros seems like it does well in these formats where the average stats are just a little bit lower.
I gotta say, I think Dwee's having a field day right now, given that Tauros is absolutely driving this match forward. The one thing I want to point attention to as well here as we go into this turn number 1, I think looking at which Pokemon Vijay targets in terms of who do you close combat will give us a good indication of who's in the back, because if it is going to be the Snorlax finally making an appearance in this game too, I think you're okay with Trick Room going up. Jeremy isn't going to go for it just yet, as they will be switching out the Porygon 2 immediately for that Amoonguss. Certainly could take a close combat, but that's not the target. It's Incineroar, and that's a one-hit KO.
Vijay is red hot, just absolutely calling that one. Useless switch. Not going to have Incineroar for the rest of the game. No fake out coming out. So Sylveon also going to be able to dish out some damage. Hey, you know, it's not a whole lot, but if you don't give anything up for it and remove an entire Pokemon, a very problematic Pokemon, I might add, as there are several Pokemon on this team who really do not want to be intimidated. This is a pretty scary spot now where could we be seeing this crazy team going to 5-0?
I think it's very likely. The Flare Blitz into that Amoonguss feels like a very safe play, especially when you consider this Amoonguss is running both Pollen Puff and Clear Smog. The only way it can avoid damage would be to switch back into Jeremy's party, which is what we see, but they're sending in that Ursaluna. It might be able to take one attack here, but can it take two?
Oh, wow.
Okay, it actually might be able to take two, but still, it's going to be on the same timer we saw in game number 1, where that burn is going to come in and pick up that knockout very quickly if Quick Attack doesn't beat it to it.
That's what I'm going to say. That's terrible, right? Where it's almost worse than it survived. We're very close to being knocked out by this burn. There's like not a whole lot of obvious counterplay to a Quick Attack into that slot, and then Vijay can kind of just make a read on what he thinks is going to be the other slot. You either close combat if you're expecting Porygon, or you know, go for the Fire type attack if you're expecting Amoonguss. And you know what Jeremy really needs is to find some way to get Amoonguss in next to Ursaluna and Pollen Puff. But I just know how you do that when it's weakened so much. But he is going to go for it, or they are going to go for it.
Yeah, they are going to go for it, but at what cost? The nice thing here is that Amoonguss will return to the field at full health thanks to the regenerator ability, so that can sort of open the door here. We'll probably take a little bit of chip damage here on the switch, assuming the Tauros targets down that slot, which, given the quick attack into that Ursaluna, that's exactly not what we see, as Vijay probably predicting that the Ursaluna would switch out there and going for the Flare Blitz there instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable play. So now you're in an awkward position where, well, Amoonguss needs to use both Rage Powder and Pollen Puff in this turn.
Yeah.
That is not a thing. So now I think you probably have to switch Ursaluna back out for Porygon and try to get some situation later where Amoonguss is free to Pollen Puff a switching in Ursaluna. It's dicey. It's real dicey.
It is real dicey out there. I love, though, just to see how Jeremy is keeping their composure in this matchup. I feel like a lot of times when you're playing a matchup like this, where there's no way you could have anticipated, you're learning as you go. It's very easy to get lost in the heat of the moment, but they are keeping their cool.
There's a chance.
There's a chance here.
This is a very exploitable turn. I'm surprised to see this.
We knew going into this turn that there was going to be a double protect here from Vijay, protecting both the Pokemon from damage. Facade going into that first protect. Pollen Puff making the correct call. Will be able to heal up that Ursaluna. Looking a little bit more comfortable on the field for Jeremy now.
Yeah, I just don't understand that play. There's no reason to give this up for free now. There's really no counterplay to it. Well, yeah, I mean, you could go for a second Pollen Puff probably and just target the Tauros slot. Likely to pick up a knockout that way. Suddenly you wind up with 3 pretty healthy Pokemon again. And there's a real chance that Jeremy can pull this one back. It's been such a great start to this game, but letting the foot off the gas maybe at just the wrong moment.
It's a tough call to make because at the end of the day, you definitely have to watch out for Trick Room. You have to watch out for the fact that both these Pokemon could be put to sleep by Spore. And with Porygon 2 in the back as well, there certainly is still a lot of damage potential for Jeremy. But I think Vijay just unfortunately taking a step off the gas, like you mentioned, will be bringing that momentum back further as Meowscarada will switch out onto the field. Tauros will be KO'd by the Facade, finally landing. At least the Meowscarada won't be put to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, nice switch there where does predict the Spore, so the Pollen Puff gets it right. So Ursula not quite as healthy as it could be, and Meowscarada now going to have the option of hopefully surviving long enough to be on the field as the Trick Room expires, and then able to ignore this Rage Powder and start causing problems for whatever Pokemon is alongside Amoonguss when that occurs.
Scyther, without the threat of the Incineroar on the opposing side of the field anymore, feels a little bit more comfortable. We still have to wait for the end of Trick Room here.
Yeah, so this is another scary double protect, right? Where there's no nothing to stop the option of another Pollen Puff, and there's also the chance for a substitute, although a little risky perhaps at this point with how low the health on the Ursaluna is.
I feel like you just go for another Pollen Puff. I mean, you made that call earlier on in the game. You could try and make it again. Okay, here we go. Substitute will protect the Ursaluna from any priority attacks. And here's a fun fact for you. Pollen Puff into Substitute will still work. So actually that was a very great play. Jeremy is able to have their cake and eat it too, as even though Trick Room has now expired, that Ursaluna has the Substitute up and also has the protection of the Amoonguss alongside of it.
Yeah, this Ursaluna was once so weakened that it was a single attack away from, or a single turn away from feigning to a burn. Now, very healthy, has a substitute up. This is the risk of just double protecting your way through Trick Room, right? Where if your opponent's in wave taking advantage of it, as we mentioned in the pregame, not Earthquake there, instead substitute. And now, Jeremy's put themselves in just such a nice position where this game just felt so over. This is why you don't lock in the forfeit when you still have a way out.
You do never give up until the final Pokemon makes its move, sings. I'm going to work on that. For now, knockoff into the Amoonguss will get rid of its items, but Dual Wing Beat will be doing enough damage to pick up the KO there. That is boosted by that Technician ability, so going to do a good chunk of damage, possibly even get that knockout without the additional chip from knockoff, assuming there is no berry in play, of course. Facade coming through will connect with that Scyther. No Eviolite in play there, as that is yet again a one-hit KO on that Pokemon.
Yeah, it's big too. I think if Scyther had survived that, it kind of looked over.
Yeah.
But now I think it really is probably slightly Jeremy favored. There's no longer a great way to stop this Trick Room. There's the awkwardness of Hyper Voice going through Substitute here, and there's still the Focus Sash on the Meowscarada, but there's a real way now you can kind of imagine maybe Porygon 2 could finish this one.
Yeah.
Because suddenly that Meowscarada needs to do a lot before it faints, right? You want to knock off this Eviolite. You'd like to get another swing on the Ursaluna. Will Vijay be able to do everything fast enough, or is Jeremy going to claw this one back?
I almost feel like Trick Room is a trap here for Jeremy, as they might not have time to reset it, and you just want to go for as much damage as possible. But that's certainly a pace that Vijay is going to be matching with that Terra Stellar Terastallization to boost knockoff into Porygon 2. We'll be removing the Eviolite, like you just mentioned, Scott. Hyper Voice going to follow up with the 1-2 punch, and it is enough to pick up the KO on Porygon 2. So even though there is a substitute present on the field for Ursaluna, and even though the Facade will be picking up that KO on Sylveon, we are once again in an end game where Meowscarada, Focus Sash intact, just has to wait 1-2 more turns for that burn to pick up the KO.
Yeah, wow, I mean, it was so close, right? I think if Porygon 2 is able to survive that Hyper Voice, we have a different winner of this game too. But I don't think there's any way Ursaluna is going to be able to stop this Meowscarada, and we see the power of that Stellar Terra type. You know, we've seen it a lot on these Focus Sash Pokemon, able to boost whatever attack you need. You know, Meowscarada is probably not going to survive more than 2 swings anyway, so no need for a defensive Terra type, and that extra damage and that knockoff could make all the difference in this match.
We see another Terastallization from the Ursaluna on the opposing side of the field. Maybe just trying to match the Sparkles. Another substitute as well. I think Jeremy's just having a little fun here with this end game, as one more turn of burn damage will be enough to pick up the KO on that Pokemon. And I do want to also take a moment while we're waiting for this game to resolve. This Meowscarada is not running Protean. It's running Overgrow. So yes, the Dark-type boosted Terastallization attack did a lot of damage. There could have been more boosts in play. They're not, but there could have been. And I think that's a mastery that Vijay has shown, using his favorite partner Pokemon yet again, but this time moving on undefeated here in Baltimore after 5 rounds of Swiss.
Hey, not a team anybody expected to see at 5-0, but we see why it got there. Really impressive set there. Jeremy almost clawing that one back. I think that was a very heroic comeback attempt, but in the end, just the damage that these Pokemon were able to deal, especially that Tauros, just absolutely looking like a monster in that set. And, you know, sometimes there's games like this.
Sometimes there's games like this where your best game plan is one that has a lot of downsides, but you take those chances, you make those mistakes, and you learn from your losses. And I think if anybody can bounce back, it's a trainer like Jeremy, where I think their their Day 2 Worlds performance this past year was really their breakout performance. And I'm really excited to see where they go from here, because they've shown a lot of flexibility. I think they showed a lot of resolve against a team that would honestly shake me to my core. So
yeah, and North America did not have a very good World Championships this year.
No,
but
there's also that.
Jeremy, one of the few great exceptions, right, where was able to hang in that challenging format. And yeah, I mean, I think they've been really consistent in general, right? One of the better Swiss players in North America, I think, throughout the whole season last year. So, you know, again, this is certainly not a matchup that they were prepared for, because why would they be? And hey, you know, maybe after this, everyone's going to need to be.
I was going to say, I want to see y'all groovy challenge trainers in chat preparing your Eviolite Scythers and Blaze Breed Tauros to bring in the Grand Challenge next weekend. But I want to also look back. It's so interesting to me that both of these games ended thanks to burn damage onto the Ursaluna of all Pokemon. Like, it took itself out. That was the win con.
Yeah, I love the end though. Yeah. Better to the faint than be knocked out there, as Ursaluna slowly goes out in its own terms. I thought Germany did like a really fantastic job of getting Ursaluna healthy there. That game was so over. Like, there was at least real doubt, but Vijay was just so good early in both Game 1 and Game 2 at making the right reads. You know, he whiffed a couple of those predictions. It's like a very different game, but poor Jeremy just like kept immediately losing Pokemon. And then, you know, with these more defensive teams that want to switch around a little bit more, once you start breaking the core, it's really tough, you know?
Yeah.
And I think something that's cool too is, like, I think often when we see these teams of like unconventional Pokemon, sometimes they get a bad rap for more serious players because they're like cheesy or whatever. There wasn't really any cheese there, right? You just used a bunch of attacks. Like, there was no quirks, there was no gimmicks, there wasn't any like unexpected abilities, just swinging away with powerful attacks from Pokemon we don't see very much, and it was electric. I really enjoyed that set.
I was gonna say, like, and I say this as a compliment, that felt like a team that I could have used to, you know, become the Paldean regional champion. and then also show up at a regional championships in this realm and do very well. And I think that's something that you never really see in VGC, and I want to celebrate that. You know, a lot of times when players come into their first regional championship, and I know this hasn't been VJ's first, but just bear with me for a moment, they bring their in-game teams and they think, this will be fine. I think Vijay has just shown us all that it can be fine. You know, yes, you probably need to take a moment to make sure your stats are in alignment, your items are in alignment, all this normal stuff you would do coming into a tournament, but there's no reason why you can't run Assault Vest Snorlax or Sylveon with the Fairy Feather and have a good time. And I love that. I genuinely love that.
Yeah, you're going a little further with one that I think I would go, but I think at the very least we can concede. You know, we've kind of been talking all day about how this format's a lot more open and how you know, you can use a much wider variety of Pokemon now that the power level of the format's a little bit lower. I think we didn't know how right we were when we were saying that, right? Where like, this is a long way from an in-game team. However, you know, a bunch of Pokemon we weren't expecting to see, and even the Pokemon that I think we saw maybe used in ways we weren't expecting, where, you know, if I'm going to see Scyther, if it was closed team sheet, you know, maybe I'm assuming it's like some baton pass shenanigans, right? Instead, you know, Scyther's just going on the offense, right? This whole team just going on the offense, and I think the quick tempo of this team is sort of a thing probably that could work in a lot of different ways, as maybe trainers look for quick ways to kind of get the offense rolling and not let your opponents execute their strategies in like a very setup strategy-based format.
I'm worried that I might try too hard in the in-game mode of Scarlet and Violet, so maybe I need to rethink my values for a moment. But that's okay, as Vijay is ready for an interview with Dwee, and I'm sure they're itching to talk about Tauros. So let's not take any more time and let's throw to them.
Thank you so much, Gabby. There's a lot of Pokemon to talk about from that team. I'm currently joined by Vijay, now the previous winner of the Swiss round. Let's just talk about it. Let's talk about your team. It's one of the most fascinating teams that we've seen, so let's break it down.
Yeah, so I think going to this format, I feel like, you know, Sun Spam is going to be on every team, Trick Room's going to be on every team. So I feel like, one, having a way to constantly pressure Amoonguss. Like, if you look at my team, the whole team has a way to, like, attack Amoonguss. Number two, like, with AV, Thick Fat, Terra Psychic Snorlax, like, I know, the Sun matchup is really good. Yeah, I feel like just looking at Sun, I think for this one, I think Sun, for Rain, and then Goldango with Tailwind. I think those three I really focused on.
Gotcha, yeah, and of course Meowscarada was a Pokemon that was very important. It was a part of your endgame in both games. Can you talk about that, since from what I've heard is that Meowscarada has been a Pokemon that's been core to your strategies for about, what, over a year now?
Yeah, I love it. Since San Diego 2023 was my first tournament, had Meowscarada, never took it off. Been like maybe 17th regional now, never took it off. I'm a huge believer. I think Overgrow plus Flower Trick, you know, ignoring being a grass type, great matchup to Dozo. I think it's just the knockoff is, you know, you could see how good knockoff was there. Like, you know, remember game 2, I knocked off the Amoonguss into the dual wing beat. If I dual wing beat right there, the Citrus is gonna proc. It won't do one shot and I'll put to sleep. So having knockoff is so helpful, especially against like a non-Rocky Helmet Amoonguss.
Gotcha, and of course Scyther was a Pokemon that was featured. Can you tell us a little bit more about your decision on choosing Scyther, a Pokemon that, well, it's from Red and Blue, and you know, a lot of people opted for Scizor, its evolution, a couple of years ago and stuff like that, but like Scyther, can you tell us about Scyther?
So Scyther actually has, it's only Pokemon to have the same base stat total when it evolves, so Scizor and Scyther have the same base stat total, so I think really good contender for Evolite. I think it's the only good user of dual wing beat, which is one-shots Hisuian Lilligant through Sash, one-shots Smeargle, one-shots, even on his team he had the Flamigo, that would have one-shotted through Sash. So I feel like having one double hit move on like a team is really helpful. Scyther, like, you know, very bulky, attacks very hard. You saw how hard the dual wing beat hits, you know. I think with Terra Dragon, it's like very, very flexible on any matchup.
Yep, and of course the Paldean Tauros. Can you tell us a little bit more about your decision on including Tauros in your team?
I feel like out of all six, it's the one I'm the least sure on. I was using Hisuian Arcanine, but I felt like being resistant to steel when Goldango's everywhere was so important. I'm using Mirror, you know, the white herb right now, because I feel like sometimes if they don't bring Intimidate, I want to be able to like make the item useful, go for close combat, make it a little bit bulky, you know, take me back to normal. But I don't know, Tauros, I hear Tauros really shown. Right. But sometimes, I don't know, I'm not the biggest, yeah.
So mostly just in this matchup versus Jeremy that it came out, but you of the 6 that you have right now, you feel like Tauros isn't necessarily your favorite of the 6?
I like using it, I haven't used it as much as the others, but.
Gotcha. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about the matchup, like what you thought about when you saw Jeremy's team and how you wanted to react to that?
Yeah, so I already know Meowscarada has to come out. It's gonna be immune to Spore, and it's going to be able to take a facade from Ursaluna at 1 and attack back. So I know Meowscarada is solid into that. I think, Tauros, I know he's going to want to set up Trick Room with Incin, Porygon, so I think Tauros always have to come out. I forgot what I led the first time. I know the second time, I know he's going to lead that again. Sylveon, be able to like constantly pressure. Although the Sylveon was hard because he had the substitute, and the Hyper Voice doesn't actually break substitute, so that's actually very tricky. And like even around game 2, like I was almost like throwing the match. Like he was playing very well, and I was very nervous.
Well, you ended up out on top. Congratulations on this win. Can I just ask you quickly what your thoughts are on Regulation H? Are you having a great time right now competing?
No. This is my favorite format of all time. I'm going to travel as much as I can. I love the format a lot. I think I'm so excited to see how it develops, what new teams come, and I'm so ready to do the calcs when that comes out.
That sounds amazing. Of course, this team is so cool. It's so spectacular. You can't see it right now, but I actually have Snorlax socks on right now. So I'm secretly going to be rooting for you and Snorlax to succeed. Before I let you go prepare for your next Swiss round, do you have any shout-outs that you want to make out to anybody watching right now, the stream and broadcast?
Oh yeah, shout out Portland, shout out Texas, shout out VG Trainer School, shout out to everyone who coached me, shout out to everyone who believed in me, shout out to everyone who didn't believe in me, just shout out to everyone, the whole community, we're out here.
Vijay, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about your team, talk to you, and I wish you the best of luck here at the 2025 Pokemon Regional Championships. We're going to go and throw to a quick break, but when we come back, more action here in Baltimore.